welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is not Alan Saunders. That is Steelers DB Derek Bell filling in for us. Alan at his daughter's homecoming. So shout out to Alan, shout out to his daughter, and shout out to DB for filling in on a feel-good Friday. Derek's been with us on Fridays regardless, but either way, just the two of us, not the three of us. How we doing, DB?
Doing well, man. Interesting game to talk about between Steelers Colts. I've been watching some clips over the past couple hours just to try to get ready for this one, and I'm really excited about it because I'm actually going to the game on Sunday. So it'll be the first
There you
Steelers game
go.
I've went to in a couple years. So I'm excited about that too.
I was going to ask because that's a trip that you normally would make when the Steelers are in Indy, right? So
Yeah, it's a nice easy trip for me. It's only like 2 hours away, so I'm excited about that.
mhm.
It's been a couple years since I've been to a game, so I'm excited. I'm actually going to Indy tomorrow morning and gonna spend the weekend up there. So I'm excited.
There we go. Before we dive into like the specifics of this, I just want to ask you on the surface, do you feel any differently about this game than you did like preseason about this game?
Um, I do, mainly because of the injuries we'll talk about. The
Okay.
Colts are
All
down
right. Yeah.
half their defensive starters. So, yeah, I mean, this was a game that I was actually like pretty excited about it, not just because I had tickets to the
Mhm.
game, but just in general. I think it's a fun matchup, and I also think like there's a little bit of a I don't say like revenge because I think revenge regular season games from non-divisional opponents may be a weird way to look at it. But I mean, the Colts kind of punked them out last year in the second half of that game.
Yeah.
So I'm kind
The way
of
that they ran the ball on us with like no name backs, like
yeah. I think or at least I'm hoping that the Steelers like front seven is a little bit ticked off about that still. So I hope they pull
mhm.
up the tape on that a little bit. I actually watched the second half of that game yesterday. But yeah, I think it might be a nice little get back. That's what I'm hoping for anyway.
I feel like, I mean, I love Cam, and I'm not saying that I dislike this about him. It's just I think that it's just the way he is. We know that he sees everything about himself. Like you look at the way that he was
Hmm.
this offseason when people were talking about not paying him and stuff.
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like he's been keeping this one because of the way that they ran the ball on the Steelers last year. So I think that that's definitely something that's on their mind right now.
Was 174 yards or something like that on 30 something carries, and they did it with Tyler
Yeah.
Goodson and Trey Sermon.
Yep.
so
Hmm.
like it wasn't even Jonathan Taylor. That's or Zach Moss.
Or
Zach
yeah, I
Moss I
say or
think got
Zach
the
Moss.
start. I think Moss got the start in that game. He got hurt. And then they
Yeah,
had basically,
insane.
third, fourth stringers out there. But yeah, I think this is like I said, revenge game would be a little too strong. But I think the
Sure.
Steelers defense going to want to get back on
Mhm.
Steichen and the boys in Indy.
Let's talk about the injury reports from both sides here. We will start with our Steelers first and dive into things in that respect. We knew Alex Highsmith was going to miss this game. It's one of those things where it's like he's not on IR, but it was never a question of whether he was going to
Hmm.
play or not play in this game. Certainly wasn't going to play. Russell Wilson listed as questionable. We're not going to see him. Isaac Seumalo was limited throughout the week, and when he started out the week as a limited on Wednesday, I thought we could be getting him back. Doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. He's listed as doubtful. Jaylen Warren not going to play in this one, rolled out as well as MyCole Pruitt, which going into the first 2 weeks, he played 68 snaps in those 2 weeks. And people were like, making it seem like it wasn't a big deal. But I was like, okay, where are those snaps coming from, though? Like, so it'd be
Sure.
interesting to me what that's going to look like. Does it look like it did week 3 going into week 4 as well? Or do we see some type of shift there? What do you kind of make of the injuries here? And how do you think the left guard situation plays out? Because from everything I've heard, it sounds like we are going to see maybe there's still a semi rotation there, but it sounds like it's going to be Mason McCormick ahead of Spencer Anderson to start.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and to be honest with you, I mean, this is kind of how it should be, in my opinion. I mean, I think it's tough because expectations, anytime you're starting a second year, seventh round pick in Spencer Anderson, they got to be tempered, right? Like,
Yeah,
those guys are always like facing an uphill battle in the NFL. But like, we just got to call it what it is. Like, he's really struggled the first 3 weeks of the season. Like, a lot of
yeah,
blown assignments. Like, they have been really inefficient running the football this year so far. I mean, they're in the bottom like 5 of the league in like rushing success rate. And like you can't just put all of that on one player, but there's a lot of missed assignments up front. And I think that kind of stinks. But I'm excited to see what McCormick can do on like a full-time basis. He played a decent amount last week, but they actually used him as a sixth offensive lineman a decent amount, along with the rotation that you were talking about. I think this is going to be a nice game to kind of get him acclimated. Grover Stewart is a nice player, especially against the run. He's somebody who I've kind of admired from afar for a long time. No DeForest Buckner in this one, which we can kind of talk and slide
Right.
into the Colts injuries after this. But that's a pretty big loss. And then they're basically playing Taven Bryan at defensive tackle right now as well. So like this isn't a matchup where I'm like overly concerned as far as like getting him acclimated. I think it'll be a really good test for him because remember we got to keep in mind, like McCormick's facing a huge like spike in competition level, right? Because the
Mhm.
where he played in college, like he's basically jumping up 2 levels. But in terms of James Daniels, he's had a heck of a start to the season. He's going to get paid in the offseason, and we kind of expect that the Steelers are going to let him walk. So this is going to get a good look at what this could potentially look like maybe next year.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with McCormick, I'm more curious, and it's going to kind of go into the game plan stuff here that I want to talk
Hmm.
about. But I feel good about where he is in terms of how he's going to be run blocking. Like, I think there's no question about what he can do, and I think he has the right temperament for sure. I think he's going to have some lapses in pass pro, and that's probably what you'll see there. But with the way that I kind of expect them, I mean, Indianapolis has been able to be had whether it's on the ground or through the air, and especially the injuries we're going to talk about. Maybe the Steelers can get them through the air as well. But I think the Steelers first and foremost want to run the football. So I think Mason McCormick makes more sense, anyways, just from that perspective to play in this game right now.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like you said, they want to run the football. I mean, you
Yeah.
just look at like the early down run rates and just Arthur Smith's history. Like they want to run the ball no matter what. So it makes sense to put your best run blocker out there. And I truly do believe that like McCormick gives them more right now than Anderson. Now we'll
Mhm.
see because again, we got to have a little bit more proof of concept, right? But I think that that's the right move just based on what we've seen so far from both guys.
The other one I want to talk about is no Jaylen Warren, who actually was probably one of the bright spots in that game last year against the Colts was Jaylen
Hmm.
Warren. Um, and we know how much of a bright spot he's been for this offense in general when healthy. We haven't seen him healthy yet this regular season. I think it's been pretty apparent that he's dealing, whether it is still with the hamstring. I know that it's a knee thing that they're saying right now that's going on there. Who knows what else going on with Jaylen Warren, but clearly not healthy. Man, Cordell Patterson in the fourth quarter of last week's game, like, man, him, Najee, the offensive line, they were just bullying the Chargers around. I feel pretty good about him, what he's going to do from that perspective. And like, if they have to sprinkle in Jonathan Ward or something, if he gets elevated, that's fine too. But how do you feel about the perspectives of not having Jaylen Warren for this one and having to plug and play Cordell Patterson in a bigger capacity?
Yeah, like to your point, I think it's been pretty evident that Warren doesn't look like himself right now. Just with like
Mhm.
some of the things he's dealing with physically. I think Najee's ran hard. Like last week, there was a time in the game where they had 15 carries for 17 yards. They couldn't run the ball at all. And
Yeah.
then the fourth quarter came around, they kind of started wearing him down. And Alan and I talked about this on the post game, but it really helps, sometimes in those fourth quarters when you got two 235-pound backs that you can kind of lean
Yeah.
on between Harris and Patterson. And to what you said, like they started wearing them down. Both those guys are running really hard. Um, I am kind of excited to see Cordero Patterson run the ball. Like, I actually think that he's kind of fun to watch run just because of like his upright running style, like the way he finishes runs.
Dude, I think a
Um,
lot of people, for whatever reason, because like you think about kick returners, I think
yeah,
people thought like he was like some like finesse runner or something like that. Like he will
nope,
run a dude over. Like, yeah,
yeah,
he's seeking contact.
yeah.
Like, I don't think a lot of people thought that that was his style, and now you're seeing it up close and personal.
And you can tell too because if you go just look at like the carries that they've given him so far this year, Arthur Smith's been with him for a while, so like he knows like what Patterson like does well and what he doesn't do well. So they only run like certain concepts with him in the game, and you could tell
Mhm.
it's basically like what can we get him downhill the quickest on. So like they'll run like mid zone to the weak side, and then like we saw that like outside zone play, which he did a really good job on that play, like setting those blocks up. But yeah, I think they'll be fine. It also would surprise me, like the pony personnel usage is kind of tough to look at right now. Like we talk about it all the time in the
Yeah.
offseason. They never use it. They used it last week, but like Patterson was more so playing receiver. But I actually think like they could use it this week because the Packers in general like had a lot of success using like a lot of two back stuff 2 weeks ago to
Mhm.
counter like what the Colts were doing on defense. So that's something like you may see this week, in addition to like some of the quarterback run game that they were doing with like Malik Willis, trying to transfer some of that over. So I'm very interested to see, if we do get some snaps where maybe both those guys are on the field at the same time.
I mean, I'm all for it. Like you said, we talked about the pony formation a few off seasons in a row now, just to really not see it come to
every year.
fruition in the regular season. Yeah. Let's talk about from the Colts perspective. You mentioned some of the guys that they're going to be missing there, man. Like Chris Lamons is questionable for this one. Kenny Moore, Kwity Paye out. DeForest Buckner's already on IR, so out for this game, but wasn't listed on the injury report, obviously. 2 offensive linemen, even Braden Smith questionable, Ryan Kelly questionable. They did not practice on Friday. And then Tyquan Lewis, another defensive back, did not practice on Friday. He's listed as questionable. So who knows what's going to happen with the way that these things are going to shake out. But they're down a lot of guys.
Yeah. I think they're down 5 starters from like what their preseason projected
That
like
is
depth
crazy.
chart. Like I think Juju Brents, like their corner, I think he might be out for the year as
Yeah,
well.
he's out as well. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, I
And
think
then
I'm thinking back to the way Tyquan Lewis is a defensive lineman. I think it's a DB when I was going through that, but defensive lineman.
yeah. But Moore and his backup, right, are both out in this one, correct?
He's
Did they rule him out?
questionable, I thought.
Okay. But yeah, I mean they're pretty banged up all across the
Mhm.
defense. And I mean, like, this is a defense that, in my opinion, the Steelers should be able to move the ball on this team. I mean, Gus Bradley does what Gus Bradley does. He's gotten a little more bold in recent years. I think he's a little bit less predictable than he used to be, but you can get a good feel on like what you're going to see from a Gus Bradley defense. They're going to play a lot of single high. It's going to be an absolute ton of cover 3. They are mixing in some like cover 2 stuff. And one thing that Gus Bradley's done, I think more recently, I think this is a recent thing, but he's blitzing a lot more on third down. Fields
Mhm.
has actually been pretty good against the blitz. He's been good on third downs in general. I think he's around like top 10 in EPA per play and success rate on third down. So like that's not really necessarily a concern to me. But the Colts love to play their zone coverage. They don't play a ton of man. But on third down, they blitzed on like nearly 40% of snaps. So that's just something to keep an eye on, depending on like down and distance and game script and things like that. But you can expect like a similar thing. The Steelers are going to need to run the ball better, especially more efficiently early in this game. We mentioned the slow start last week, but last week they saw a ton of light boxes on like 70% of their snaps, just because like that's the way the Chargers play. They play a lot of 2 deep,
Mhm.
but that's not how the Colts play. Like they're going to stack the box. You're going to see 7-8 guys in there. So it's gonna be a fun challenge between two. I think Arthur Smith and Gus Bradley are very, like, I don't want to say like predictable in a bad way, but they like what they like. Like exactly what you're gonna get from both
Yeah.
of these play callers. It's just some of the wrinkles or designery stuff that they do like week to week that kind of makes them a little bit unique.
Yeah, this was put out there by Zach Hicks, who does a great job covering the Colts. Uh, Expected starting trio for the Colts this weekend: Jaylen Jones, Sam Womack, Chris Lamons at corner.
Anyone in the comments that can tell me anything about those 3 guys, just one cool fact,
Yo,
gets a
Samuel
prize.
Womack was with the 49ers and got
Yeah,
released from them. I actually kind of wanted the Steelers to pick him up for some
I think I
insurance on the
remember you
inside.
saying that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, had some intriguing tape. But
Jaylen Jones has had some good moments. I will say that. Like, he had some really good moments last week against the Bears. I actually think he had an interception, I think, too. But
mm,
yeah, I mean, no Kenny Moore, that's kind of good too. Like, for some of the early down stuff, like the Colts, when Moore is out there, like they have the capacity to play nickel to like 12 personnel if they want to, just because like Moore is a guy who is a willing tackler. So like that
yeah.
kind of helps. And when you don't have that guy in the nickel, it definitely changes things. But yeah, I mean, the big thing is like Buckner to me, like having to play Taven Bryan this amount of snaps, especially on early downs. Like,
Former
one
first round
thing,
pick, Brian.
yeah, I think that's just really rough. And like another thing too that's kind of like surprised me personally, I think and I think this was a strength for them last year. At least like a lot of the really good Colts people that I follow said it was. Their linebackers have not been good this year, like at all. I don't know what the deal is, but they both, like Speed and Franklin, I think they both have looked really, really slow to the ball. So
Mm.
look for the Steelers to incorporate pullers and misdirection. Like that, those would be the 2 things that I think that Arthur Smith's going to lean into in this one.
And speaking of Zaire Franklin, he's trying to get his hands on a terrible towel on Sunday. So if you're going to the game, make sure it's not yours.
I
Um,
got you. Guard it with my life.
let's let's talk about some matchups that we're looking forward to. Is there anything on paper that you're like, whether it's position versus position, player versus player, that jumps off the page to you that you want to see in this one?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about it in the opening, just kind of the run defense aspect of it. So Steichen is I think Steichen's one of the better coordinators in the NFL right now. I think a lot of the things that he does is pretty unique, especially in the run game. They do some different stuff. They do a lot of gun run stuff. I mean, there's definitely a lot of carryover from like what they were doing in Philly a couple years ago. You'll see a lot of RPOs. One thing with Richardson with his legs, and Mike Tomlin alluded to it this week, is just Taylor is a gifted runner, which I want to talk about, but just Richardson like commanding that extra person in the box because of what he can do
Mhm.
with his legs kind of makes it even more difficult. But this is a pretty good offensive line, both as a run blocking unit and as a pass blocking unit. Of course, we don't know if Kelly and Smith are actually going to play
Yeah.
in this one, but Taylor's a really gifted runner, man. I've been really impressed. Like he's probably the player that I've been most impressed with on their team. Like just watching through the film, I've watched all 3 games from this year, but just the patience, the burst, the vision, everything's there. I think he's an absolutely outstanding running back. So, he's not a perfect player. There's some other things that you can kind of get him on, but when it comes to like just running the football, there aren't very many players better. And like I said, I want to see how the Steelers front seven is going to respond. There's a lot of familiar faces that played in this matchup last year, and I kind of hope that they took that one a little bit personally. So I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Well, yeah, even one-on-one, like Cam Hayward versus Quentin Nelson's been a fun matchup over the years when these 2
Hmm.
teams do go against each other, so we'll see how many, times they line up against each other in this one. What about Anthony Richardson just versus the entire defensive backfield? I mean, this is a guy that right now is averaging or has a better completion percentage on his throws over 50 yards than he does at or behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, he is taking his shots for better or worse right now, and I don't know, like, I might be, I'm giving something away here, but my bold prediction is he's throwing one to the other team this weekend. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's something to watch for too. Are the Steelers going to be able, because this is basically a rookie season still for Anthony Richardson?
No doubt.
Are they going to be able to get him on Sunday and confuse him? What are they going to throw at him? What type of looks? It's going to be interesting to see that chess match.
Yeah. I mean, something I talk about a lot is like arm strength. Like people confuse arm strength a lot of the time in terms of like just how far you can throw the football. A lot of guys can throw the
Hmm.
football far. In Richardson's case, though, like arm strength is not only like the type of windows that he can hit, but like he has a different type of club than pretty much everybody else in the league. Like there are very few guys that can throw the ball to every like inch of the field, and he's one of them. You mentioned like the deep ball accuracy, like that's the part of the field he's most accurate to. It's really been like the
Yeah.
intermediate and underneath stuff that he hasn't been able to hit. That's the big thing too. Like this weekend, Taylor's got the capacity to break off a bunch of explosive runs, but Richardson can stretch the field with his arm, and obviously what he could do as a scrambler or as a runner too is a factor. But they got to keep a lid on the explosive plays. Coming into the league or coming into this week, the Packers are the only team with a higher explosive play rate than the Colts. So that's been
Mm.
their thing. The Colts have like 30th, I think, in passing success rate. So like that's something that's not very good at all. And a lot of that can be explained by some of the just bizarre accuracy misses by Richardson underneath. And like he just doesn't have it down to down right now. Like, and it's not the fact that he's raw, like he doesn't know what to do with the ball. He's just not accurate. And like he tried a no look pass last week against the Bears, and it's like, brother, you're completing like 50% of your passes. Like that's way too much dip on your chip. You need to chill out and just throw the curl like a normal quarterback. But he does, like, the dude's talented enough. Like it shouldn't be, it wouldn't be a surprise. Like if he goes out there and throws 250-yard bombs in the first quarter, like he has that in his bag. Or he could start off, 1 for 7 and miss a bunch of layups underneath. It really is. He's about as unpredictable as they come. But Steichen does a good job. Like some of the RPO stuff are kind of like easy buttons for him. And like I said, Richardson will more than likely get to the right spot in the progression versus the coverage that he's getting. It's just a matter of like, is he going to be able to hit it? And like you said, I think you can get him. There will be some like overthrows and balls that are inaccurate that are capable of being picked off. So we'll see if they can take advantage of that.
What about on the other side of things, the Steelers offense versus the Indianapolis Colts defense? I think that we still haven't, like, I mean, we've talked about the injuries, obviously, and stuff like that, but how do you feel like those units match up against each other? And within that, is there anything specifically that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the big thing is like, if Gus Bradley's going to play a lot of single high, you're going to have your one-on-ones on the outside. Kenny Moore not playing, there's some potential. Maybe you could get some involvement from the slot. Like, who knows? I mean, Calvin Austin made some plays in the slot last week against a completely different like defensive contour. But like, can you depend on that week to week? I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't think that the Colts are going to necessarily have Jalen Jones travel with George Pickens. I mean, they might. I don't know. But I mean, Pickens is definitely more talented than anybody they've got in the secondary. So like, that's the thing. I think Nick Cross has played pretty well for them at safety. It seems like, he's kind of had a pretty solid start to the season, but I think Pickens one-on-one on the outside is definitely somewhere that you can get him. And like, kind of mentioned it already with the run game stuff, but I think personally that the Colts struggle with like misdirection pullers. You can get them on double teams. I don't think they're tackles right now that they're playing. Stewart's fine, but Brian, like, you can get him on some of this stuff. So I think they'll probably target him in the run game. And I want to see too, like, big thing this week is quarterback run game. I think that we're getting really close. I'm in the process of like writing something for the site right now, but I think we're getting closer to having like that breakout Justin Fields game with his legs. And I know he talked about it a little bit this week as well, as far as like needing to get his legs going. I think they've been closer than maybe the stat line appears they have been. Just some missed assignments, some mental errors from guys on offense, and I don't know. I think that this could be the week. The Packers had some success with some quarterback run stuff. Willis had a really nice run. I think he broke off an explosive on a design run, and he also had like a 20-yard scramble. So
Mhm.
those are some things I'm kind of looking for sure.
I think that it lines up for that to happen when you look at the opponent as well as Mason McCormick, who that's what he brings to the table, his insertion into the starting lineup in place of Spencer Anderson. That all makes sense to me. You mentioned Calvin Austin within there. That's the thing that I'm looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
4 for 95 and a touchdown last week. Only the fifth Steeler since 2022 to have at least 4 catches, at least 95 yards, and a touchdown in the same game. Joined Pat Frymuth, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, of course, George Pickens in that group. Is he going to be able to stack weeks? Is this a guy? I'm not going to overreact to 1 week, but is he somebody? And think about it too. They were down to 3 receivers basically at
Yeah.
that point too. They kind of screwed themselves by only dressing 4, and then Van Jefferson suffering an eye injury.
Yeah.
So
Had to have it.
yeah, you had to have that type of performance. And I just wonder, is this, a sign of what's to come in the offense? Are they going to find a way to do this on a regular basis to be able to unlock a guy like that we really haven't seen? But Arthur Smith has at least moderate success with a play. Like, I mean, if you want to compare him to like Khalif Raymond, who's carved out an NFL role for himself,
Sure.
Arthur Smith has been able to design touches for a player like that in the past. So maybe this is as good of a shot as Calvin Austin has to become an actual NFL contributor.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin himself. I mean, I think he would probably honestly tell you this too. Like, he's not going to get a better opportunity than what he has in front of him right now. Like,
Yeah.
Steelers are begging for someone other than George Pickens to step up at wide receiver. He played awesome last week. He made some really good plays after the catch. And one of the things too, like you mentioned, like, can Calvin stack good weeks together? Like, I'm kind of thinking the same thing about Justin Fields. And it's not that Justin hasn't
Mhm.
played solid ball. I think he has, but I was really encouraged. I did a video on my channel just breaking down some of the things that I saw like positive growth from as it pertains to like operating quick game, work in the middle of the field. I mean, we talked about it, I think, on the podcast last week. They hadn't completed a pass in the middle of the field past 10 yards yet. And they completed
Yeah, right.
three,
Mhm.
one of which was the long touchdown to Calvin. And then he had the laser to Fryermuth right before the half that was, kind of bang, bang play, but it was dropped. So he could have had 4 completions in one game. Now, of course, it depends on like the defenses that you're going to play and stuff like that. But if Justin looks
Yeah.
the way that he did last week from the pocket, he only scrambled 1 time. That's it. He was winning from the pocket last week, which is one of the reasons I was really encouraged. So can he stack good weeks together? One more thing I want to bring up though, just before we move on.
Mhm.
Play action. So like, this is kind of the middle of the field thing was, it was non-existent through the first couple weeks. Play action's been a struggle for the Steelers this year, like really, really bad. I mean, they're averaging, I think Fields is averaging like 1.1 average depth of target on play action plays. The only thing they've been able to do off play action has been check the ball down. That's it. Nothing's been like a lot of stuff, a lot of their half field stuff, their sell concepts and stuff been covered up well. Fields probably had a turn down last week that he probably should have let rip against quarters on a post to Pickens, who was kind of running like 75% speed. But that's kind of the next thing that I want to see this offense break out in is like, I think they really need to find some explosives in the play action game that hasn't come yet. But it's a good week for that because the Colts averaging 12.4 yards per attempt off
Ooh.
play action. Only one NFL team right now has allowed more yards than the Colts off play action, and that's been the Dolphins. So if you're looking for the signs, those are the signs.
So the play action game hasn't been there. Neither is the screen game. Yeah, I expected this team to be pretty. I mean, maybe as the year goes on, we'll see it improve. But this
That
was
may
actually
be
another.
that may
Go
be
ahead.
another offensive line thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I'm just saying that's why I'm saying, like, as the year goes on,
Yeah.
maybe we see that improve. You get Isaac back, more camaraderie with
Yep.
a group that you hope is able to stay together. Maybe that area things improve. You mentioned the middle of the field, and I wanted to bring this up too, just especially because of the injuries that Indianapolis has both up front and then on the outside.
Mhm.
That is probably the strength of where that group is right now, though. I know that we talked about their linebackers not maybe playing all that well right now in Speed and Franklin, but then you add Nick Cross and Julian Blackman into the equation as well. I'm curious to see if the Steelers are able to take advantage of the middle field, because if I'm thinking about where to attack and where to not attack this Colts defense, I'm not saying I'm avoiding it, but that's probably
Yeah.
the one area that you'd be the most concerned about.
Yeah. And like I said, I think the ways that you would probably go about that are like some misdirection stuff. Like even another thing that the Packers did, and I keep referencing the Packers game,
I mean, they did whatever
because
they
it's
wanted. Yeah.
yeah, they did whatever they wanted, but also like because there are some similarities, like not that Willis and Fields are necessarily one for one by any means, but like they were playing a mobile running quarterback. The Packers were pretty limited in some of the things that they could do in the passing game, and the Steelers at times probably feel the same way. But also because Smith used to work with LaFleur, and I am
Yeah.
100% convinced, just based on like my study of Smith's offense over the summer, I think he's still stuff from LaFleur all the time. I see some
Probably.
similarities between those two guys, so it wouldn't surprise me if you see some carryover from those two game plans. But you can like even something that the Packers did 2 weeks ago was they had some like wide receiver sweeps and some things like that. Again, going along with the misdirection stuff that we're able to create some explosives against this Colts defense. So I just think you can get the eyes of some of these players in the middle of the field, even though I do probably agree. I think their safeties are playing pretty well. Me and you both, I think, like Julian Blackman as a player. Like we talked about him in the
Mhm.
offseason. And then Cross was,
I thought there was a good chance he became a Steeler, to be honest, based on people I was
yeah,
talking to. Yeah.
yeah, and Cross was a guy that I liked a good amount. I thought that he definitely had some. He was one of those guys that you were betting on the traits more than anything else coming out of Maryland. But I think, at least from what I've seen, I think he's been fine through the first 3 weeks of the season. I know a lot of Colts fans and stuff were worried about him because it's been kind of slow moving through the first couple of weeks. So, but he's played solid ball. So, but I do agree with you. Like they're going to have their chances outside. The Colts don't have anybody to cover George Pickens, and I think that Fields, as long as he plays, the way that he has been playing, taking care of the football, and hopefully we can get some more, passing down the field going on too.
All right, so you'll be at the game on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So we need a score prediction for what you're going to see, as well as one. I always give Tyler an out on this. Maybe I should give you and Alan an out on this as well on Fridays. It's got to be at least semi-bold to bold prediction that you make, because some people will take advantage. Like me saying Anthony Richardson has a turnover, that's not really that bold. So
Okay.
however you want to take this, but we need a score prediction and one, at least what you would consider semi-bold prediction.
Man, I don't. I'm trying to think about this here. I do think the Steelers are going to win the game. That's just my opinion. I don't know. Like, what's the over under? Do you know the over under?
I mean, I could look real quick.
Personally, every game this season, I bet the under on the Steelers game, and it's worked out really well for me.
Martin, it
So
is 40 and a half right now.
40 and a half. Okay. I will take the under. But I think the Steelers win. I think it'll probably be like 20-16 or something like that. Typical Steelers game. Because I mean, I keep thinking, like I said, I've watched the Colts the 3 games from this season, and I look at the progress that the Steelers made in certain areas last week, and I'm like, man, this could be the week. This could be the week. I just don't know if it's going to be the week. I almost need I need them to actually do it before I actually bet on them to score 30 points. But I mean, they could have scored 27 last week if Najee would have just went to the end zone at the end of the game. So maybe it was a little bit better than we're giving credit for, because I thought they did control the game, especially in the second half of that one. But is a Minka? Well, you already said that Richardson was going to throw a pick. I think Minkah has a good chance of getting a pick in this one. That would probably be one that I would lean on. And then I would also say that I'm trying to think of like what I could play myself into here with the run game. I think that they'll break off. I'll say Minkah gets a pick and they break off 3 runs where you get pullers up front that are explosives for longer than like 12 to 15 yards.
Okay.
I'm going to say one of them's by Fields. They get one from Patterson. They get one from Najee.
Okay. You're even giving me the specific players. I like it. Yeah. All right. Make a pick was where I was going with that. But just so one of us can be right when a safety does it, I'm going to say Deshaun Elliott gets his second. I have him. Did you know he only had 3 career picks coming into this season? I said he was going to double that by the end of the year. So I think he gets at least 3 this season. So here comes the second one against Anthony Richardson in this one. An offensive one, Cordero Patterson gets a rushing touchdown. And I'll give you a little bonus here. This is the
Wait, hold on. Who did you say had 3 picks coming into the season?
Deshaun Elliott.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Only has 3 in his career. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I knew that. Go ahead. Sorry.
And this is the week that this is happening. We know this happens at least once every year. He's going to get one this week. Miles Killebrew blocked punt.
I love it.
It's happening at some point. I don't know. Yeah. Is Indy special teams any good? I don't know, but Miles Killebrew is going to break through that unit and block one this week.
Do they play the Titans this year? They do play the Titans this year, do they, or no?
Steelers.
No. Oh, okay. Well, the Titans have already had multiple block punts this year, so I was saying if you were going to actually like put monetary value, maybe wait until that week to do it. But that's a cool one. That's a cool one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to call it until it happens. I think at this point, I was thinking about it last week. He came kind of close to one, or at least in stadium, it looked like he came close to one.
Yeah,
I don't know if it looked that close live, but everybody's like, ooh, and I was like, you know what? That's going to be my prediction
for next week.
For next week is that he's getting his. All right, good stuff. Let us know in the comments what your predictions are for the game, both as a score and if you got one semi-bold prediction. DB will be at the game. Excited for you to get in the stadium. DB, other than at Lucas Oil on Sunday. Tell the people they can find you.
Yeah, at Steelers_DB on Twitter/X and YouTube. And then you can find all my written work at SteelersNow.com. Like I said, I'm writing up something literally right now just about Fields and quarterback run game and some things that I think you could potentially see on Sunday. So that should be up probably in the morning. So if you guys are looking for that type of stuff, obviously you got the preview here. I'll be doing the preview on my YouTube channel as well. And tons of content from Alan, myself, and everybody else on the website. So lots of stuff.
Some of the best content can only be found SN Plus. You have a discount code as well, I believe, right?
Yep, it's Derek10. Alan says his code gives him 10% off. I'm pretty sure my code gives y'all $10 off. Don't tell nobody because then they'll take it away. But that I'm like 90% sure someone hit me up last week and said that it was $10 off. So if you want something, I think that comes out to like $30 for the entire year, and you get everything on the site. You get it ad free, like Alan likes to tell you guys about. So it's definitely it's definitely a cool little perk. So if you guys are interested, be sure to check it out.
There you go. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you are here on YouTube, hit us in the comments, like I said, with what you think is going to happen in this game. If you got a bold prediction, also questions for future episodes, drop those down below as well. And then leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive, just like you can find us on TikTok at Steelers Afternoon Drive. And then you can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Derek Bell and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.